So a common approach to this is to use infrastructure as code, which leverages the programmability of cloud infrastructure. It's repeatable, it's testable, it's shareable, scalable, and peer-reviewed, Terraform, CloudFormation, things like that. But we need to match that with policy as code for security at scale. So in the data center, the infrastructure teams would develop the infrastructure to the app teams would deploy into that infrastructure, and validations and audits generally performed manually, as I just described. In the cloud era, the developers create and modify their own infrastructure. When you build an app now, the app gets infrastructure as a side effect, as part of its process rather than you having a data center of stuff and you deploy an app into something that's been secured. You're creating that stuff for the app. And therefore, you really need to go from a manual process of validation, and audits are just painful for everyone. We want a better way than manual validation and auditing. What we want to do is automate with policy as code so that the machines can do this for us instead of us doing it in painful and imperfect ways. So that policy as code is going to empower the engineers who are now in control of the infrastructure to also own the security of their cloud infrastructure by getting real, useful, actionable feedback, particularly when they're doing something dangerous. So you can do this all the way across the SDLC. You should do this all the way across the SDLC. If you don't, you're either going to be spending money or being less secure in ways that you don't want to. So the design phase, and that's really what we're going to focus on today, you can validate infrastructure as code, like Terraform, with policy as code to correct the violations early. And that's what New Light are going to do this really cool demo of, and I'm going to talk to as well. But then you also want to maintain that policy as code throughout the deployment process into production so that you can enforce it. So you want to check up front. We're going to focus on that today by looking at your infrastructure as code, but then you want to bake into your CI/CD pipeline the ability to prevent bad deployments. When policy as code says this is dangerous, you should not build that and put it in production. And then once it's in production, remember the use case, the scenario I was talking about before, somebody goes in to do a maintenance window and leaves a bad port open. In that scenario, the checking it at design time doesn't help you, right? Because you got it right at design time, somebody messed it up later. And so that's where you need that same policy as code to go all the way through the SDLC.